Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to this very, very exciting live show where we will be discussing the Obsidian Path series and An End to Sorrow with, of course, Andrew's Wizardly Reads, Johanna, and the man himself. I'm pointing the wrong direction, like always on StreamYard, Michael R. Fletcher. I cannot. I'm not capable of pointing in the right direction on StreamYard, but very exciting here. So we can have everybody introduce themselves. I say mine are right behind me. I should have gotten them out.
Yeah, I was doing it on the sly. Not really slyly, but
yeah, I think probably everybody who's here is going to know who we are here, but we can do some introductions. So we can start right with you, Michael.
Okay. Hi, I'm Michael R. Fletcher, author of the Obsidian Path series, which is what we're here to talk about, and a few other books, City of Sacrifice, the Manifest Illusion stuff, like Beyond Redemption and whatnot, and then a couple other books that are nobody's reading. Like the Millennial Manifesto, my sort of ill-advised attempt at writing a real world kind of stuff where apparently fantasy fans are like, no, Mike, we're not going with you there.
Sometimes you got to drag them kicking and screaming.
Yeah, I tried, and they are resistant, but what you gonna do?
You could always just do that gif where people, where like Melissa McCarthy's like taking the book and like, read the book! Like throw it at your fans.
Sometimes that's what you need for sure. We can probably go clockwise. I'm pointing the wrong way because it's bad.
So me next?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Johanna from the channel Johanna, and I'm very excited to be here with Nico and Andrew and Michael R. Fletcher. So very excited to talk about this over on my channel. I mostly talk about fantasy. I read other genres as well. But yeah, it's going to be a fun conversation tonight.
I am Andrew of the Wizardly Reads. I am I always introduce myself as a professional weirdo who likes to review fantasy books online. I made sure to eat plenty of sugar and drink lots of coffee before this chat so I can be extra obnoxious.
Yay.
Just the way we like it.
No, I'm fine.
Next, we have our Fletch God Apocalypse comment, which I will say, it felt really weird to call you Michael. I might go with Mike because I know you go by Mike too, but I'm so used to referring to you as Fletcher.
So they're all good. I get called all of them, and
I use the last name so much. It's just weird. And we got Bookish Drummer.
It's that drummer dude.
Oh, I missed the first comment. So there's Safina here as well.
Safina, yes.
Well, I'm going to put up, we did promise we'd start spoiler free. Yeah. So I will put up the spoiler free banner now, just so as people join, they know that we're not yet going to be doing any spoilers. So I figured we could just kind of start with just general, like talking about the series as a whole, things you like, hopefully get some insight from Fletcher over here as well into that kind of things. Does anybody have any specific general non-spoiler burning questions to start us off?
Yes. When am I getting my hardcover of book 3?
So hardcovers should go live May 15th along with everything else.
Okay, perfect.
Which reminds me, I kind of need to bug Felix about that, my artist.
I was going to ask you about your actually, because I that's something I'm sure that that question's been exhausted already, but I'm curious about the cover art because I love it.
Yeah. So for each book, you can go, it's off to the side there. Anyway, so for each book, what I do is I pick a couple of scenes from the book, 2 or 3 that I really like and that I think are like going to be visually cool. I send them to Felix Ortiz, my artist. He picks which one he wants to do. Him being the artist and me not. I just trust him. I remember for She Dreams in Blood, I kind of really wanted him to do this other scene. And he was like, no, that's mental. It was too big. I had this sort of visual of, Kren sort of on this little rundown ship sailing into Abidjan harbor, and, all the giants there and dragons flying around the huge city. And he's like, it's too much. It's too busy. That's not a good cover, dude. So, you got to trust him.
Yeah.
The cover art is great.
But and then the Sorrow, that is a scene from the book. As I'm pretty sure you guys have already known.
I think that's
so his name is pronounced Kren.
That's how I pronounce it. I actually I figure everyone pronounces it however they want, and I'm totally fine with it. I don't include. There's no pronunciation guides in any of my books, so I don't expect anyone to say it the same way I do.
I think I was saying like Karen or something like that.
And I was going to say, Andrew is definitely wrong, though, because you started saying Karen, and before it's too long, you were saying Karen. And it made me laugh. It sounded like you were saying Karen. But I'm just thinking about
that makes me want to change it. Whole book, different meaning if it's Karen.
Oh, no.
He's just going to go up to the Wizards, ask to speak to their manager, and everything get involved.
And it's just going to go awfully wrong for him.
Yeah, we got Mark Timony in the house as well.
Mark is good people.
So
is he though?
I mean, I think he's pretty good people. He sent me a nice copy of his book. Like, yeah.
So I have to say that this book has been such a fun, wild ride, and there have been so many plot twists that I did not see coming. And I'm not the best at predicting plot twists to begin with, but they've been so wild that I get so excited every time I hear somebody who's reading the books, any of the books, because I'm like always asking them, please tell me what you thought of this. I know Bookish Drummer is in the chat, and I've done that with him. Tell me when you get here. Tell me when you get to the end. Let me know what you think. And also another thing I really am enjoying about this, or what I've enjoyed so far, is like how, and this is by the way, I actually should ask you this first. This is an ended trilogy now, right? Or is it going to be expanded upon?
So this is it's a finished trilogy. That's not to say there might not be a sort of a second trilogy. That kind of depends. I've got some other books, some other stuff I really have to finish first. But then depending on how things are going, I would very much like to come back and write the next 3 books. And for anyone who's actually read the early release, the way that ends, you can kind of see where it's going next. And I can't talk about it at all, but I'm really excited to someday get to write that.
It was that would be so cool to get a second trilogy, because I literally the poignant thing I said about the end of book 3 was it was a beautiful train wreck.
Yeah.
And
that's a good way to describe.
Yeah, it's this really absolute train wreck, and it fits
in the best way possible.
That was really, really hard to write. I mean, because you've got this one character, okay, no spoilers, who has been plotting various things for 3 books, and is always like half a dozen steps ahead of everybody, and to bring the reader there, so that they get it and they see all of the different things that have been going on, and hearkening back to sort of earlier moments to sort of like refresh their memory, because I mean, who knows how long ago somebody read book 1, right? That was really challenging. I hopefully I pulled it off, but man, I rewrote that ending many times before I was sort of happy with it.
So
I was reading the 3rd book, and I read it ridiculously fast. So I also had to like wait for other people to read it so that I could talk to them about it. But I just keep going. I'm like, this is crazy. How in the heck is this going to end? And I couldn't figure out what was going to happen until the end. And I still didn't really totally see it coming. Like parts of it, I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. But it just, it was such a wild ride.
One of the things that Johanna and I we were just messaging back and forth, just constantly talking about the themes and the ideas that you were able to pack within this trilogy. I mean, like from the moment I started, it's like, there's the toxic relationship, the absolute power corrupts absolutely. You've got morality. Does memory define identity? Like you've got all these important themes, and I'm sure I've missed something. Like, what was your kind of headspace when you were kind of just cramming all of these into some surprisingly short books to have to address those type of themes?
Yeah. So a lot of the themes are intentional. A lot of what's going on is sort of background obsessions for me. You will see like a lot of the same sort of ideas and themes get explored in different ways in all of my books. Memory and identity. For me, that's just clearly a full-blown obsession. And so like Cran, the Obsidian Heart was just another chance to spin it a different way. like if you change the orders in which you sort of of your memories, like how does that shape your life and stuff. The toxic relationships, I really wanted to, I've gone after like sociopaths and stuff in other books, but I really wanted to sort of play with it not necessarily being the power balance, not being where you initially think it is, and just sort of I wanted to pull the rug out from under the reader a little bit. We'll leave it there.
Yeah.
You did a good job.
I say it's so hard to tiptoe around spoilers.
Yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
One thing I can say spoiler free though is that I feel like you get a bigger introduction to the world as you move through the trilogy as well. And so I'm just always curious, did you already have the concept of this world in mind when you started book one?
Yeah. So the world, all of the various magic systems, of which there are 5 or 6, I can't remember. So I'm a huge role-playing nerd. And I ran a Stormbringer campaign back in the mid to late 90s that lasted somewhere between 5 and 10 years, sort of off and on. And so a lot of Kren was actually one of the characters. That we splintered off where we left that the Coliseum Stormbringer gaming system. We wrote our own gaming system. I ended up coming up with like detailed rules for magic, sorcery, demonology, elementalism, necromancy. And then we played in this sort of game system that I'd written for many, many more years. In fact, we still get together on Mondays to do that. So I had the world all pre-built back in the 90s. Had the magic systems all just ridiculously defined. Like I know all the rules, what's possible, what's not. In fact, I first tried to write Blackstone Heart in, I think, 1995. And I couldn't finish it because it turned out writing books was difficult and required effort. And I wasn't there yet. I couldn't do it. Like, I think I got 30 or 40,000 words into the book and was like, oh, I can't do this.
At what point did you pick it up again?
So I started writing it again 2016, 2017. It was this has always been like my pet project. This has been the story this is what was why I wanted to write, was to tell this story. And so I think 2016, 2017, I decided I was ready to sort of try it again. Dug up my old, the first draft. I still have the first draft of what I'd started before. Whew, so bad. So bad.
Did anything make it in?
No, not a single word. I just scrapped it. Was like, all right, let's start again. So, that scene in the very first book when he claws out from, underneath the roots of a tree out in the forest, that was actually just a scene lifted from the role-playing campaign, where one of the characters sort of wakes up after having been slaughtered.
So I've got to ask, are we going to get an Obsidian Path Prime, kind of like the Brandon Sanderson, what he did with The Way of the Kings?
I have read a Brandon Sanderson book or two, but I don't know enough about what he's doing to have any idea whether, like, what it is. I would equate the Obsidian Path stuff and my other works to something a little closer to a Moorcock's sort of like his multiverse kind of idea.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
That's very nice.
So you just started all the way. So, because Manifest Illusions was your first one, right?
Yeah, well, that was the first one that sort of like anyone read. Yeah. So
okay.
Ghosts of Tomorrow was technically my first book. Signed that with a really small Canadian publisher. It was called 88 was the book's title at the time. I think it sold about 32 copies. About 9 of those my mom bought. And then
you're doing significantly better.
Yeah, so things have improved since then. Then Beyond Redemption sold to Harper Voyager, and that kind of like everything took off after that.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know it was traditionally published.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that either. Okay.
Yeah, Beyond Redemption.
I learned that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Beyond Redemption. Yeah, that one was traditionally published.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that everything else is self-published.
So do you prefer the self-published game?
I'm torn. So I mean, if I'm honest, part of the original dream was landing a trilogy book deal with a big publisher, and that I can't quite just let go of that dream. It's still there. But Beyond Redemption did well in terms of reviews. It was critically well received, but it didn't sell really well. So the Harper Voyager weren't terribly interested in like the sequel, The Mirror's Truth. Since then, I've been through a couple of agents, and these are like for real agents that everyone has heard of, that represent other authors you've heard of. And so the Obsidian Path, that was shopped. Blackstone Heart was shopped to all the publishers. Everyone was like, no one was interested. City of Sacrifice series, that's been shopped. No one was interested. So since I'd already written them, I was like, I'm just going to self-publish them anyway. And kind of glad I did because it worked out kind of amazingly well.
Oh, for sure. Oh, I'm glad that they did get published. Yeah, we literally wouldn't be here on this video otherwise, but they were also fantastic. So.
And the first book came in second place, right, for the self-published.
Yep. Yeah, Blackstone Heart came in second for last year's SPFBO.
That's
really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It did remind me. I was going to ask how you got Mark Lawrence to write your author bio, because that always makes me laugh at the end of the book.
Yeah, that I can't remember how that happened. I think I was joking about it. I'm too lazy to write my own bio. Who can write me a bio? I'll send you whiskey. And so Mark wrote a bio. I was like, oh crap, I owe you a whiskey.
Awesome.
Did he get his whiskey?
I actually messaged him asking for his mailing address, and he was like, dude, it's not going to be that easy. I'm not telling you where I live.
Probably fair.
Yeah, okay. So he did it sort of for fun and out of the kindness of his heart.
That's awesome. I love that.
And then we have a question from Christian here. So given that there are other worlds, can we assume there's a shared Fletcher verse?
Anyone who's read enough of my books has probably seen some connections. Part of it sort of is in the obsessions I mentioned before. Mirrors keep creeping up. Obsidian happens a lot. Stone magic. So yeah, they are connected, but there's not going to be a book sort of tying everything together. But there's definitely a connection.
I could see that though with the Obsidian Path being the way it is, and like how the story. I'm trying to tiptoe around this. How it explores multiple worlds and things like that. That's very, very interesting.
Yep. I mean,
there's lots of references to other worlds existing, so I feel like that leaves open for, if nothing else, for fans to imagine that it's all connected.
I've mentioned demonology, and really, so a demon is just something you've called from another reality or universe to your universe, but where they come from, they're not like, oh, I'm a demon. That was Bob.
That's a great way of looking at it. We've got Bookish Drummer wants to know if book 3 will have an audiobook, because he says the audiobooks are great for the series. So
it will, which reminds me, I should probably message the gentleman who did my second audiobook, see if he's interested in doing the third.
You keep saying that reminds me.
Oh, I'm so bad at this. It's hilarious that it's like, oh.
If anybody in the chat wants to volunteer to be my assistant.
I kind of need some sort of a assistant to actually make, life choices for me, and sort of go, hey, Mike, remember that thing you're supposed to do? You should probably do it now.
I thought that was what like Alexa and Siri were for.
Yeah, I do that a lot. My phone is constantly binging with messages, and I'm like, what the? Oh, shit, I got a thing I should do.
And then we got another question. Fit to be Read asks if it's more fun to write heroes or villains. And I feel like that's an especially hard question for you, given the type of characters you write.
Yeah, see, I don't really consider, I don't think in terms of like heroes and villains, there's never a good guy and a bad guy. There's no, that just seems like kind of for me, it seems a little childish. I like everyone's doing their best, but they're working at cross purposes. So no one's like, I'm being evil to be evil. So, they've got a goal. They've got things that they want to happen, things they think should happen for what are, no doubt to them, perfectly good reasons. Like Kren and the Soul Stone stuff. Is it evil? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I think what I would say about Kren more than anything else is that this is a character who has very conflicting motivations. That would be probably a good way to to describe him.
Yeah.
That was what made the character, I mean, the books in general were so good, but the character was just so interesting and complex to read because of the fact that, the series starts with him not knowing who he is and finding out more. And like Andrew kind of mentioned, there's lots of bit about, do the memories make you who you are, or is it your other experiences? There's so much exploration of that. And you see, sometimes he seems to have the noblest of intentions, but the way he might try to accomplish something might be definitely considered like full-blown evil, even if he's trying to do the right thing. And so he's still so stuck between what he wants to do. And there's a lot of to the ends justify the means there as well. And kind of just all of that discussion, a lot of it internal, and it just makes such an interesting character.
Yeah.
And the people on what, you would call the opposite side, they're hardly pure. They're hardly, good guys. They had sort of allowed this huge civilization to collapse, and fall into sort of the dark ages because they're focused on other interests.
Yeah.
That's fair. Do you have a favorite of the three books?
So Blackstone Heart, probably I have to pick that one because that was the story that got it all going. I am stupendously happy with how An End to Sorrow turned out, and I'm also really glad to have it done. I love writing, but I have been trapped in that same world for 3 books, and my little squirrel brain wants to chase after a new shiny idea now.
Nice. I really liked the decision, by the way, to make this in first person, because as we have Kren who's trying to figure out his identity and figure out what he believes and having all these internal conflicts, I think it really helps that we're in his head. I know that could be a difficult choice sometimes, I think.
That's purely Brian Staveley's fault. So I was going to write, I may have even started, I can't remember. I was going to write sort of a tight third person POV because that's sort of my comfort zone. And I'd read Staveley's Skullsworn, and it first person, and it's done brilliantly. It's such an amazing book. And I asked him how, whether it was easy to do, and he lied and said yes. And then he laughed about it afterwards. He was like, sucker. And it's not easy at all.
It sounds actually harder.
For me, it was really hard at first. I think it took a while to click where I started to feel comfortable. But at first, there's, you first get into that first person and it's like, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. Wow, this is really boring. How do I change this up? How do I sort of put it in his POV without him talking about himself all the time?
Yeah. Writing, I've read books where the first person POV was just not executed well, and it can be agonizing to read. So getting that down correctly is very, very important because the reader has to basically take in this story, but it can get boring if you're just and I did this and I did that.
Yeah. And weirdly, because it's first person past tense, it's really easy for it to come off sounding like he's there safely narrating the story afterwards. And in a way that's kind of true, but it's also not. So the way my approach was to sort of look at it as if he's telling you this story kind of as it happens. It's just happened. Everything's, I wanted it to still feel very immediate rather than, remember the day when I was gardening and all that shit happened. It's I was boom, 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 boom. I want the reader sucked in and sort of trapped in there with him, even though it's technically past tense.
I never felt he was safe.
No, me neither.
He was
No.
never safe.
Yeah, so why, I'm just curious, is there a preference or a reason to make it past tense then instead of present tense first person? Just a preference thing?
Yeah, a first person present tense. That's hard to do well. I
Never been my-
remember I tried to write something unrelated, first person present tense, and it was just never really clicked. I didn't like the way it turned out. Whereas that first person past kind of felt more natural, and because of the way that little prologue bit starts, where it hints that he's sort of talking to himself, either from the future or the past, and you're never really sure, because there are other sort of shards of his heart out there. The past just really made sense for me.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I think it's my preference too. I don't mind first person, but I know for some reason it just takes me a bit more adjusting mentally when I'm reading first person present. I really can't put my finger on why.
Yeah.
I do think it's with first person in general, I feel like it's a lot harder to do well. I used to just think I didn't like first person stories at all because I'd read several that were not particularly good. And I'm like, oh, maybe it's just first person. And then, I've since read several series, including this one, that are first person, and I'm like, oh, this is so good. And so it does definitely, I feel like, take more. And I feel like third person can also be excellent, but I feel like it's a little easier because you're allowed to explain things, and you can't really do that in the same way in first person.
Yeah, third person's definitely sort of comfort zone for me.
So Johanna kind of already talked about this a little bit, but because there are so many twists and turns, do you bullet point, or do you do plots, or are you a discovery writer?
I'm somewhere in between. So I tend to hold the book in my head. I know. All right, so backing up a little bit. More important than plot is character motivation, which is how I write. I'm not interested in coming up with a plot. I need to know what all the characters want, what they're trying to get, and then I basically play it out in my head how they would react in various situations, and that's where the book goes. I tend to work in 3-chapter chunks, so I'll look at sort of where I am, and I'll figure out what I want or where I think things should go for the next 3 chapters. I'll make a couple of point form notes, and then I write those 3 chapters, stop and repeat, over and over until I think that the book is done.
Oh, that's actually really interesting because I've never heard of that approach before.
I kind of like that though, because it was very well paced in my opinion. I felt like it didn't slow down for me for a second, but at the same time, it didn't feel, I don't know, it worked. It just flowed really well. But I feel like if you were just I don't know, kind of, I feel like it could get formulaic if you had a sort of plot point system.
Yeah, that's my feeling as well. Part of the problem for me is I get bored plotting, and so the book I'm working on now, I was like, I'm going to plot this entire damn book before I even write the first word, and I plotted 3 chapters, and I was like, fuck it, that's enough, let's go. I don't want to do that. I want to see where it should go. I want the characters, and this is insane, but the characters have to have some say in the story, and so I have ideas where things could go, and then characters do something that just absolutely makes sense, and you're like, that is what that person would do, and the fact that I wanted the plot to go elsewhere is just less important.
I like that as a way of approach. I think that makes sense and avoids the thing you see a lot of times where it's like, why would that character wouldn't do that?
Yeah,
Are you kidding me? You're making them do this.
Stories where a character makes a dumb decision because the plot requires it. Like,
Nico knows what I'm going to talk about here. That is one of my main issues with Realm of the Elderlings. Is a lot of the times there are certain moments where you can feel Robin Hobb reaching into the story and forcing an issue.
Don't tell me because I'm barely.
This is very much a me complaint. Like a lot of people say I'm nuts, when I say I can feel the author taking a hand and forcing a decision.
Mhm.
And I don't like that. It's something that bothers me very, very much because for me, it makes it feel like it's an improper characterization. And, you're doing your character a disservice by doing that because you're trying to force a plot point over what the character wants to do or would do. And I really appreciate that because I can flip through the entire book in my brain and nothing stands out to where I was just like, oh, yeah, Fletcher forced this. It's always like, no, Karen did something stupid. And yes, I said Karen on purpose.
As soon as you see Karen.
Yeah. Well, I figure when you're starting with all these, and everyone in the book is sort of broken in some way, right? When you're
Right.
starting with these sort of like basically broken people, you don't really need to like force plot points because they're going to make some bad decisions for you. You just got to get out of the way and let them do it.
For sure.
It makes for fit to be read. Just post it. It makes for something that's more organic, and I think that works.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And there were definitely times too where Kren would do something that I'm like, that is so dumb. But yeah, that's exactly what he would do. Like another character might even tell him no, you can't do this. And he's like, I'm going to do it. And I'm like, yeah, you are. That's exactly what you would do in this situation.
I got a
And
kick out of that actually, especially in the last book, because I just felt like some of the characters are like, just don't like the ones who were
But
like
it felt
10 steps
so
ahead of them
realistic. Yeah.
were just like,
One of the things I love that Kren does, I almost said Karen again, just to be funny. I had to stop myself. Had to pull it back. Is when he says, no, I'm not going to do this. And then like his subconscious battle with himself takes place. And like he just does the thing that he said he wasn't going to do. And he's just like, why did I do this? It's like, well, because you're an idiot.
Like,
I
and
got
part of that is
out of that with this book because that's part of it is that Kren doesn't really know himself. He's trying to figure out his identity. So figuring out his motivation is kind of even a mystery to him, I think, along the way.
Yeah, and what I'd call like one of the background themes is people have a tendency to do what they want and then justify the reasons afterwards.
Oh yeah.
We all do way less. There's less forethought in almost everything we do than anyone wants to admit. Everything's like until somebody actually corners you on it, you're just like, I did what I wanted. They're like, why did you do that? You're like, oh, I have reasons.
That's funny. I'm actually reading a nonfiction book right now called Behave, and it's all about that. How many influences inform our decision making that we're not even aware of. Just so
and
many.
that's absolutely Kren. I mean, you'll notice like in every case, he's defending his actions afterwards and like, oh, well, that's why I did this kind of thing. I was forced to. Rather than, like, oh, I'm going to do this evil thing. It was kind of like, well, if they just got out of my way, I wouldn't have had to have done that. But always justifications.
Oh yeah. So we had some other. I hadn't the comments for a little bit. So we had. I assume that's supposed to be Alexa. We're going to be hired narrated for my book. Which is
Fletcher's phone is Russian.
Alexi,
remind me to hire a narrator.
You got Tall Guy Reads who just got book one last night.
Yes.
You're in for a wild ride. If you haven't gathered that
now pre-order the next two. Or actually, just pre-order the third one and then buy the second one.
And then talk to us because these books are so much fun to talk about with people. I just have had so much fun having conversations with friends about this.
I'm gonna pester Alex into doing a review now.
Now it looks like Lucas Schummer was heading out before spoilers.
Gasp! Rude.
Hi, Jake. Thanks for joining.
That's why we definitely don't want to spoil it. So that's why the very large all caps.
Yeah, very large all caps spoiler free. So I know you said you made up a lot of the magic system, for this campaign that you ran back in the 90s. But like, if this was your initial story, like who were some of your biggest influences that, kind of drove the creation of the story? Like who did you pull from a little bit to inspire you to want to write the story?
I mean, the single biggest influence would be Michael Moorcock. The Elric books, massively influential for young Mike. Absolutely loved Stormbringer. I've read all of the Stormbringer books 6 or 7 times. And so that I mean, that was for me sort of like that first anti-hero. That's where I fell in love with that idea, and it just stuck with me. Secondary influences would be Lawrence Watt Evans, his Ethshar books, and I definitely pinched magic ideas from him for sure.
That's cool.
I figure you got to be honest who you're stealing from. And Hugh Cook is a Wizard War series. The first book in particular. Brilliant.
I just heard of him for the first time like this week.
Yeah, and there's Glenn Cook, which is Black Company, and Hugh Cook, which is these other books that basically no one has heard of. But the first book in particular is insane.
The guy who brought it to my attention lives in Australia. So.
You were mentioning the 90s. Did you ever watch Memento, the movie?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Just made me think about that memory and Order of Memories and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't seen that in forever, but I loved that movie so much when I was younger. So anything having to do with like memory and identity, it's definitely in my alley.
Yeah.
So we do have a great question again from Christian here. Are your characters based on people in your life? If so, who is Nil? Every scene with him is gold. And I agree. So
he's gonna say it's Rob J. Hayes.
Okay, so if we're sticking to the Obsidian Path stuff, none of those characters are sort of like really specifically based on people. Some of the other books, yes, but not in the Obsidian Path stuff. Nil, weirdly, is kind of me. So in the campaign I ran back in the 90s, Nil was a demon of knowledge was the sort of like game terms thing of what he did. So his job was advising and, you know, that sort of stuff, the characters. And he was an NPC, which basically meant that I was playing him. So as close to Nil being based on someone, that's me. And that sort of his sense of humor is, I guess, I mean, that's.
I love the humor, by the way.
So you do really like smelling books.
I've laughed out loud sometimes. Yeah.
I loved that. That's not a spoiler, even though that's something in the third book. There's just the comment about smelling books. I'm like, yes. I posted a screenshot of a couple of different Discords because it just made me laugh so hard when I got to that point. I'm like, we're all going to relate here to this demon.
Yeah.
And then Christian agrees on Memento too.
Memento's awesome.
But does anybody have any other non-spoiler thoughts? My headphones were coming loose. Or are we ready to move into the spoiler section?
I guess one thing I'll say really quickly, spoiler free, is just I also thought your female character work was pretty strong in this trilogy. And so just curious about, and I think it got stronger as we went on in the trilogy too. So yeah, I just wonder about attention to female characters. I know that that's a big hot topic in fantasy these days. And any thoughts on that?
So I try and we all get trapped in like old stereotypes, right? It's just so easy to fall into that. So you kind of have to look for it. Now some of them like this, especially in the first book, I kind of leaned into it a little bit because I wanted the reader to come out with sort of specific opinions on some of the female characters so that I could absolutely butcher what they thought was supposed to happen. And
I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
Yeah.
Johanna and I had multiple discussions about the female representation and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So in the first book, I absolutely like if someone's like, "Oh, your female representation in the first book's a little cringy," it's like, yes, it is. But you know, I'm setting you up. Okay. The other thing I do a lot and didn't really happen in this book is I like the gender flip characters. So at the end of a book, I'll be kind of like, okay, like what happens if that character becomes male, that character becomes female, and then but all I'll do is I'll gender flip them and then not change anything else. That actually works really well for sort of flipping expectations. So that's a lot of fun, for me.
That's a great
I've never heard
technique.
It's a really interesting way to look at it too, and just to kind of show how a character works, no matter which perspective you're looking at. So,
Yes, we got Mark to buy it.
Fantastic.
I guess he's forgiven. He's forgiven you, Fletcher.
I didn't mean it, Mark. You're a lovely person.
And even though this is like a very fun, lighthearted, I don't know, grimdark fantasy. I don't know if lighthearted's the right word.
I don't know if lighthearted is the right word here.
Is it? Okay.
Black-hearted. Come on, it's right there.
Black-hearted, grimdark fantasy. There are, like you said, like we've been talking about, there are some deeper themes here too, and there is an element of racism in this world too. And I was just curious if you'd be comfortable talking about the decisions that went into that, spoiler free.
Yeah. So playing it safe isn't super interesting. And as a white dude who lives in suburbia, there are a whole bunch of things that I'm probably not supposed to do. But I'm kind of going to do them anyway. And I don't want to approach it from a sort of a racist or race driven point of view. But it sort of helps me set up expectations in the readers. And it's always a case of you're luring your reader into a trap. So it was a very conscious decision. And at the time I wondered if it was going to bite me on the ass. It's like, if I don't handle this just right, I'm going to be in so much trouble. So hopefully I did. I don't know. But, I don't want to give that away. Having the bad guy be what he is definitely could have gone sideways for me.
Got it. Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And you never know, like how people are going to react to that. Whereas like the City of Sacrifice series takes place way out in the desert. There's literally not a white person in the entire book.
Okay.
Well, and because Johanna and I also again talked about this as well, and I said, well, I mean, it's more geographical than anything else, is because you start up north where there's not a lot of sunlight, and then as they move closer to the islands, the skin tone changes as the amount of sunlight changes. And we had this whole discussion about it. I'm curious now because I want to know who you consider the bad guy, but we can talk about that in spoilers.
Yeah. And one last question, if you don't mind. So I am new to your books. These are the first I've read, and I've really had a great time with them. And I've heard fantastic things about your other books as well. I've heard fantastic things about Noleska Groans. If I said that title correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And as well as, of course, the Manifest Delusions.
Yep.
And so I've heard fantastic praise for all of your books. And so I was just curious, would you recommend somebody who's new to your writing to start here with Blackstone Heart or Manifest Delusions, Noleska Groans? Any recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, I always say people, I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. And they do tend to be dark, all of them. Can't really help that. But it's flavors of darkness. So if you're looking for sort of like nasty cyberpunk, then it's Ghosts of Tomorrow. If you want sort of insanity driven magic, it's the Manifest Illusion stuff, Beyond Redemption. If you want sort of like weird narcotic based magic and a really defined caste system and a little more looking at social things, that's the City of Sacrifice series. I think the Obsidian Path is kind of probably the closest I've ever been to like what I would call like just straight up fantasy, where it's, the magic systems, though defined, they're still classic magic systems.
Got it. Great.
So I mean, depends on your mood.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I think that gives a lot of people a lot of options, and that's a nice variety for your writing there.
Yeah. Oh, and Norilska Groans, which is Russian-based, very dark, very violent. Some people are a little upset by it.
Oh,
You
good.
know,
I'm reading it in June.
Oh, cool. Someone called it misery porn today.
Okay.
Very
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that one out. I definitely want to. I want to check that one out. I have heard fantastic things about that and about the Manifest Delusions, and so it's pretty exciting. Pretty
I've got
exciting.
the audio for Manifest Illusions.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
I definitely want that to be my next one because I literally so the first book I heard of about yours specifically was Beyond Redemption, and I caught some of the interview you did with Mark Slowly Read on his channel, and you were describing it, and I'm like, that sounds amazing.
Yes.
I need to read that, and I bought that and Blackstone Heart, but Blackstone Heart was like really short, and I'm like, I'm gonna read that one because that's easier to fit in right now, and then I was hooked. And so I continued on, and I haven't gotten back to Beyond Redemption yet. I have Ghosts of Tomorrow too, though, so I definitely want to keep reading in general. But yeah, just the whole idea behind Beyond Redemption just sounded fascinating to me.
That was so much fun to write. It's a completely mental book.
didn't you write it as like a joke for your friends or something?
Yeah. So like I said, like 32 people bought my first book. So I mean that my expectations were low. I wasn't thinking, oh yeah, it'll sell to like a big 5 publisher. I thought it was entirely possible even my small Canadian publisher wouldn't be interested in it. But I wanted to write the story. I had this like world/magic system idea. And I was screw it, I'm gonna write it. And so like all the German stuff was like little Easter eggs for my friends, hints about the plot, character motivations and stuff like that. I really I didn't think more than 6 people would ever read the book. Like it never occurred to me that somebody would pick it up. Like I didn't think I'd get an agent. I'd sent 88, which became Ghosts of Tomorrow. I submitted that to like every agent on the planet. It went to any publisher who would accept unagented submissions. Everybody was like, please lose our contact information. Just go away. No. I thought the same thing would happen with the second book, but apparently I might have got slightly better at it.
Fair enough.
Yay. Yes.
Yeah, sometimes that's how it goes.
I was going to say shout out to Slowly Read because I did see that interview as well. It was a fantastic interview that he did on his channel with you. And it's thanks to him that I actually found out about Blackstone Heart because he awarded you for his Grimmies, I think of 2020. And I immediately wanted to pick up the book, and I'm so glad I did. So
yeah, he is definitely a champion of dark and gritty fantasy.
Yes.
For sure. All right, are we ready for spoilers or any other final things? I figure honestly the non-spoiler portion can be as long as we want because there's more people who will be able to watch that portion. So that's why I haven't tried to rush through or anything. But
well, I guess if I'm going to ask a dumb question, if you had to eat one of your books with hot sauce, which one would it be?
Definitely that one. Would that cover it too? It just the
This
hot
one.
sauce. Yeah, it's gonna
Perfect.
blend right in.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'd be nice.
All right.
for crying out loud.
I'm sorry.
I was not expecting that at all.
I figure if you're talking with Fletcher, I interact with you on Twitter and it always gets crazy. So I figured a hot sauce question on eating your book wasn't outside of the realm of possibility.
No.
As you notice,
Totally
no
reasonable.
hesitation. He just answered it immediately. So.
All right. Now we can go into spoilers.
All right.
Spoilers.
Yeah, the non-spoiler has been really fun. I do most certainly have lots of spoiler things that I talk about as well. But the first thing I will say, because it's not even like, and it was pretty significant in the third book, but it's not even like one of my like favorite things, but it was just so badass that I was so excited, is Mark's leaving.
Okay, thanks, bye.
No, it's all good. That's why I have the big banners. But so the demon armor, because after 2 books of us seeing the demon armor and just like knowing it's like something crazy powerful, I still never in a million years expected the whole like tentacles thing like going inside so they can control it and like trying to take it over and needing to constantly feed on soul. It was gross but amazing, and just like that's one of those. It's so easy to build something up and have it be this big thing and then get to it and have it be like, oh, it's just armor. And like
it's
smashed it out of the park.
I do that to myself all the time. So book 1 and 2, in my brain, I'm like, oh, badass demon armor. What is it? Fuck, I don't know. No idea what it is. And then I get to the point where he has to put it on, and I get up and I walk away from my computer going, oh, fuck. I mean, and I joke about it on Twitter all the time. It'd be like, oh, okay, think of something new and super cool that people haven't read a million times. You know, here, okay, you put it off until now. Well, it's time. And so, like, I don't know, I walked away 2-3 days before I sort of came back and was like, okay, I have an idea. And then started writing it. And I think I still ended up rewriting that sort of first scene once or twice. Because stuff would change later in the book, and I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, got to work that in. But yeah, that was fun. That worked well.
I think it was cool because you achieved something interesting, because you built up the armor for 2 books, but then at the same time, like, it was really badass when he puts it on and when he starts using it. But at the same time, it wasn't as broken as I thought it was going to be. Like, I thought he was going to put it on and just OP, just tank everything, and he gets messed up when in that armor.
Yeah.
And so, like, you delivered, but at the same time, like, you didn't break the story and make him, like, it would have been very easy to just be like, and he's invulnerable. Yeah. And you're just like, oh.
Yeah. It was,
yay.
It was a good chance to sort of show that while he'd been dead for 3,000 years, the wizards had been studying and perfecting their magic, and he really was not prepared. Like, he really, I mean, you kind of see it at the end of the book. Like, he's not up to snuff at this point. I mean, he's still missing a ton of his heart. He hasn't sort of like the Demon Emperor had, you know, demons bound into his bones, into every thread in his clothes, was this sort of like unstoppable killing thing. But Kren's not that. And, you know, so he's sort of even with the armor, he gets stomped a little bit.
I think that was something that I found so interesting about Kren, is that there is a question whether he's going to be that by the time you get to the end of the trilogy, but he's not. And you find out that he comes from much more humble beginnings, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you find that out, it's like, that makes so much sense, because even though we do see a character arc for Kren, I feel like by book 3, he does become much more assertive. And yeah, he seems to know where he lands a lot more. But at the same time, if you think about it, he's very
consistently
Kren throughout the trilogy. And that should give you a clue to something. So
yeah.
His hubris all of the time, and just thinking like, I've got this new demon thing, and just how often he just immediately gets his ass kicked.
Yeah.
I think works so well. And it's like, you can see like he's using really powerful things, but like even with the armor, where it did seem for a moment like, oh, he's going to be like unstoppable now. They're like, no, we're just going to drop a building on him and then he can't move. And it doesn't really matter how strong his armor is if he can't move. And so it's just, there were so many things like that. And it happened earlier on too. Like every time he gets a new bit of knowledge, he's like, I'm going to destroy all of them now. And it's like,
no.
You're barely keeping yourself alive half the time.
I loved how he kept having to pop back to the fortress and be like, Nil, I need another sword. Like
that scene, that was one of my favorite scenes in the entire trilogy, where he just pops back and Nil's just like, here you go. And
he's just standing there holding it.
I mean,
one of my favorite Nil interactions was like, oh yeah, you've shown up at a bad time. You're currently here. Why haven't I need you to help me kill him? Why do you think I'm gonna help you do that?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to write that stuff. I mean, I love Nil.
I love Nil
Now
too.
thinking of Nil as you now, I'm just imagining that you're like, "Ah, stupid Crane, he doesn't even know what to do. Let me hand him the stuff he needs." I'm just thinking of that now. It makes it almost even funnier. But oh man, it's just the Nil scenes were great. But yeah, so much of the everything as it kept coming out was such a blast to read.
And I have to say, I love the character of Bren. Loved that character. Was
Renwick.
that based on it? That wasn't based on anybody. You just
Nope.
created that, right?
No, so that
Renwick
was
and Karen.
yeah. Brenwick was he was another PC player character from the campaign who sort of traveled with Kren. And in the campaign, like kind of by the end, I think he was running a fair size like shipping fleet, and he was always sort of like a bit of a meathead to Kren's sort of demonology and I'm going to rule the world. Bren was kind of like, can we go for pints?
But he also seems to have a sensitive side too, a soft spot. He seemed like a softie to me. He's like, it's my one flaw.
Very much.
It's my one flaw.
I liked, it's weird that I don't feel like I have any control of my characters. But he sort of, I saw this pattern in him like right away where he sets himself up for heartbreak, and he kind of like, he just throws himself into it, and then he gets to be all dramatic afterwards, about
yes.
And it was a lot of fun.
He's such a ham with that. It's so funny. Oh my goodness.
It's normally in a lot of books, if you do this character tells a story, I'm gonna get annoyed so fast and be like, we're really doing this again. Every time I'm like, oh, Brenwick's telling the story, yeah.
I felt the same way.
Mm-hmm. It worked so well, and the character was so likable. And I feel like even like he still was flawed, but especially compared to the other characters we have.
He's only got that one flaw.
Just there's the one, yeah.
It was funny because at the end of She Dreams in Blood, I thought he was dead. And so when he pops back up in Into Chaos, there we go. I was just like, wait, you're alive? And I always love the fact that like they've conquered a country. Let's blow this joint and go open up a bar in Tahiti, type of deal. Like
that's book 3 too made him, I felt like so much more of a tragic character, because he really believed in Kren even when Kren didn't think he deserved it. And he's now like his face is all messed up. He's injured. He's gone through hell. He's lost someone he loved, and he still just believes in Kren. And it almost just like makes Kren a worse person just because Brenwick believes in him. And as you see, where he kind of in some ways wants to do right by him, but also is going to continue to do whatever he wants to do. And it added just his character, while being also complex, added so much to Kren and his internal monologue and everything too. And so it's just young
guys have a tendency to sort of desperately want to belong, which makes them really easy to manipulate. They just want to be part of something big and important, and that's absolutely that's Bren, like through and through.
Well, that's Kren as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But that's through Henka.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah.
So it's just the daisy chain of people manipulating.
I just thought there was so much irony at the end of the story too, because it's just like this whole entire mission, which is just supposed to be so evil, and at the same time, it taught him about love. The odd irony of the whole story was like there was love at the end. Specifically with Brenwick, like finding his friend that he really truly cared about,
and Nil, surprisingly,
yeah.
Like, I think with Nil it was more of an FU to Henka than it was to Kren.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think it applies still.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely, that's like, there we go. Also agree with that too.
Well, and then it's so tragic because at the end he's considering manipulating Brenwick into believing that I'm sorry, I'm failing to remember her name, is actually not dead, or
Oh, the sorcerer, Nokutenda. Yeah.
yes, Norkatenda. Thank you.
That's a
And so I
name.
was thinking, no, you're going to go through that again. And this whole idea about lying, because, you know, this idea that loving is making sure somebody's happy. There were a lot of interesting, sort of unhealthy romantic ideas there that were explored that were interesting and tragic.
Well, I was with Crane too. That's another one example. Like when I said earlier, sometimes it seems like he's really honestly trying to do the right thing, but the right thing to him is so wrong, or like he wants to go about it in the worst way.
In the worst way
Like, he's my
possible.
friend. What if I just lie to him and tell him this lady he's interested in is actually alive, and just make sure that she, gets enough blood to keep up appearances, and like that's terrible. And like he kind of wants to do the right thing. Like he's coming to the bad thing from a good place. But that's what it's just so many of those scenes. It's just
it's so
it doesn't really matter what he does. It always comes back to that in a lot of ways.
Do you consider Kren to be the villain of the story?
Yeah, he is the Demon Emperor. From book one, I knew that at some point he was going to sort of become that again, and get there sort of from an odd path. Now, Henka has her own plans, and she is shaping him the entire way, like right up to the very end, right up to a new Kren crawls out of the sand out in the desert, and there's somebody waiting for him. Like even that's her backup plan.
Wow.
I will say, so while I did not see that particular ending coming at all, there were several times where it seemed like it was going to be impossible for Kren to like get out of a situation where I wondered, I'm like, is Fletcher really going to have him actually die? And then all of a sudden the POV takes on of another like bit of him. Like I wondered it like a couple of times if that was going to happen. And it would have been really jarring, but also would have been, I think, crazy interesting for something like that to happen. I'm like, are we just going to suddenly switch? Or if there was ever a time when he starts, gathering the pieces, and especially with what's his name? Was it the necromancer, or the one who specifically says like, oh no, we decide between us which one of us gives up the heart.
Yeah.
I'm so bad at names. I knew it was an N. Okay, Nagron. There we go. Yeah, when he's like, oh yeah, normally when we come together, we decide who's going to. He's like, no, I'm just going to take yours. But like if he would have done that and like the POV switch, did you ever consider doing something like that?
Oh, for sure. That was definitely it was considered. In the end, I decided not to, in part because it kind of felt untrue to everything that had come before. Whereas, the sort of the other Kren has his own sort of backstory. Now it ends, the end of the book, the way it does with this sort of like one of his other shards crawling out of the dirt. So if there is another trilogy, it's most likely from his point of view as he faces off against the Demon Emperor.
So something that was maybe a little unclear to me personally, and I'm sorry if this went over my head a little bit. So Kren actually really truly loved Henka, or was he? I understand she manipulated him,
right? So it was Henka that was behind his heart getting shattered and littered about, and with Nil's help, she knew what sort of aspects of his personality were in each shard, and so the shard that she picked to sort of guide was the one piece of his heart, that one tiny little piece of his heart that knew love. So she picked the only little piece of him that loved her and loved her absolutely. So Kren absolutely loved Henka the whole time. He had no choice. She was just playing him the whole time.
Oh, that's deeper that's a deeper cut than I thought. I knew it was messed up. I didn't know it was that messed
manipulation, but that extra detail, even adds even more to it.
Yeah. So I mean, he touches on it. He gets really close a couple of times, where he sort of he kind of moans about like, what if she's only left me the pieces of her the pieces of me that love her. But that is actually, that is absolutely what happened. So he is totally in love with her for the whole book. The other shards, they're kind of like, they all have different aspects. Each shard has its own personality.
Yeah.
So they're all different from him. They're pieces of the same guy. But that Kren is the piece that loves her. The one piece.
That's why. Okay. Thank you so much. I didn't realize that, but now that you say it, it all makes
I can't
sense.
stop smiling. That makes me so happy.
I know, it's amazing. That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
That's a masterstroke.
Yeah.
From first moment.
Well,
Book
and
one,
he's warned. Like Nils just like, listen, dude. If you're running with Henka, like she's like 30,000 steps ahead of you. Like you're never gonna. And he's just like, oh, I gotta go back and I gotta get her head and like the whole time Nils just like, whatever, man. Like, just go do your thing. She'll find you eventually. No, she's buried in the ocean. And like you find out like she had like krakens and stuff to like pull her out.
She's been building an army the whole time.
Yeah, she's got an army of sea creatures, and it's just like, what is Jesus, dude?
And
I was so
that's
sad
why,
when the undead dragon died. Well,
Yeah, what do you have against animal companions?
this is all just finally coming clear to me. Because, that was the other thing, too, is that it was weird about, with Henka, she's constantly trying to, necromancy her way to being this ideal. But
She was the great evil.
That changes throughout the trilogy. Like the way that she looks, the sort of image she takes on. And Kren is constantly saying, I just love her no matter what. And it doesn't matter. He loves her unconditionally. I'm like, there's something else driving this. And I didn't think, now that you say that, it makes sense. Because even when he's away from her, even when she's not in the room, all he can think about is how he just loves her unconditionally. So I was like, there's something, God, there's got to be something going on. Now that makes sense. Okay. Cool.
I loved the masterstroke at the end when you realize that Nil was like, oh yeah, like there was a great evil that only the Demon Emperor could protect against. And you realize it was Henka because Henka's been traveling through worlds.
Yeah.
Just building undead.
Well, I was going to say, it's at least, if not, I don't remember if it's outright confirmed, but it's at least heavily implied that Kren brought her to the world. Like, necromancy wasn't a thing on the world, but he brought her into the world specifically. So, yeah, it was his fault. And I love, like, the twist, too, because it's like the danger from another world. And he's like, oh, it's my God. I'm like, no.
It's Henka. Because the god is terrifying, but she's kind of neutered a little bit, where she can't unless she is summoned, she can't really do anything. Yep. And so I love that aspect because at the end of the second book, like you're like, geez, like she is terrifying.
Yeah.
And
that end of the second book was just wild. I did not see that coming.
It's the endings, the little tiny bits in the epilogues that got me every time. But now I have this image in my head of you, Fletcher, being especially evil in a second trilogy, if you do write it, where the whole time we forget about the god, and at the end she just comes and just like starts destroying the world, and it's like, you shouldn't have forgotten about me, or something like that, just to set up for a third one. I'm just have this thing of you being that evil.
Well, and it's funny because Kren always thinks like he's like, I've got to figure it out, and like you're like, nah, Kren, you're stupid. Don't take that ring. Don't take that ring.
Yeah, that was
and
funny.
Like he's like, I'm gonna turn it into a portal ring. It's like, whatever, dude. Like, I'm so clever.
It's like it's so believable for the character, though.
Yeah,
it
works.
He doesn't ever. He just thinks like things should happen for him, and he doesn't start to think like, oh, maybe I shouldn't take this thing they gave me. I'm infallible. I'm good.
Every single time he gets into trouble, one of the women in his life saves his ass. He almost never gets out of trouble on his own. If you go back and if you reread and pay attention to when he gets into trouble, it's Tian saves him, Shalane's sister. Shalane saves him. Henka saves him. Random kindness from some farmer woman saves him from starving to death. All through the trilogy, he almost never manages to get anything done on his own.
Wow, that's such a good point. Wow.
I mean, that first book though just sets it up so well. Where like he just pops out of the ground, he's this animal for like 3 years, finds this shack, kills the dude, and then proceeds to like, two ravenous parts of himself come together and he gains consciousness. And then from then on, it's just a train wreck.
Yeah. Also, just
poor decisions.
it just seemed so, I don't know. There's something just so almost like comical, like grimdark comical about certain scenes in this trilogy too. Like I was just seeing the whole like found family group of ragtag group going to the drunken ass tavern and it just cracked me up. I just could not stop laughing at that image in my head. Just because taverns are such a symbol in fantasy. And then
Yeah.
the ragtag group, and this is like a whole other definition of a ragtag group of friends, like or found family or whatever you want to call it.
Well, and I like the way the miscommunication trope is also used, because usually like that gets an eye roll from me. But like when he puts on the ring, gets sent to the alternate dimension, gets back, he's like, I'm gonna get Tien. I'm gonna get her. I'm gonna get her. And then like because he didn't think to ask deeper questions, he's just like, oh, that was your sister? Just standing there behind her with the sword. Oh yeah, this is my bad.
Yes. Impolite of me.
I loved, by the way, just as a side note, I loved, man, I should have written notes, but the character mom, the one that they called mother, the mom one.
Oh yeah.
I just loved her. I thought that was so fun.
Do you guys know Sarah Chorn, the editor?
I know of her.
I think I saw her post on Goodreads.
Yeah, so she's a writer too. She's written she's like very
she wrote the
poetic
the Wildfire series.
Yes. Yeah.
Glass Rhapsody and stuff like that.
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got those.
Sorry, Sarah, I'm blanking out on your name. So anyway, like she edits my stuff. And I can't remember how it came about. Like a year or two ago, I started joking about her being mother to writers instead of, mother of dragons kind of thing. And so actually mom is Sarah.
So there is a character.
I had forgotten about.
You sir are a liar.
Oh, I'm not a liar. I'm forgetful. It's totally different.
I loved her. Yeah, it was such a fun wild ride. I also flew through this book because I think ebook wise, I checked in. Like it was around, I think it comes in around 700 pages. Is that right? I mean, I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, it's the last book's a chunk longer. I mean, I never know page counts because a writer, it's not the way I think. So the other two books both are like kind of like 98,000 words. The last one I think was 145,000 words.
Yeah.
But it's a chunk longer.
Yeah.
But man, it reads fast. It reads really fast. It just hits the ground running. Yeah.
So fast. I couldn't put it down as soon as I got my copy. I'm just like,
yeah.
Except I'm not turning pages because it was on a Kindle. So I'm just like,
I know.
Yes,
yeah. I really love, by the way, the whole sequence at the beginning when he's trapped and he keeps waking up in the same room over and over again, essentially. That was
just driving him nuts. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, he's trying to get out of the room and the furniture is coming at him. And it just was that was incredible. That was so wild.
I remember Jake, who was here earlier in the chat, was I think it was him, talking about the part, like, I don't understand how he's going to get it. Actually, I don't think it was him now I think about it because he hasn't read the third book yet. But somebody was like, I don't understand how he's going to get out of this. And I'm like, just wait.
So one of the things that just popped into my head I want to circle back to was you say that like this Kryn is the one piece that loved Henka. And so when he first discovers her in the woods, is he like conscious that he's in love with this individual? Or is it just more along the because he makes a weird decision in that moment to spare her life.
Yeah.
And you think that I just kind of want to delve a little deeper of this being kind of like a more subconscious decision that he's actually like, this is his wife. And is that why he spared her?
Yeah. So he is not the piece that remembers her, because he doesn't sort of recognize her. But I mean, he's kind of, even then, I don't remember the scene well enough to sort of like pull up sentences, but even then there's something sort of like weirdly familiar about her and he's drawn to her. And even though he's got Chalain, who he's, claims to be completely in love with back at the caravan,
the woman he's been having sex with for 3 days.
Yeah. This sort of like weird dead creature, whose, undead animals are attacking the caravan is kind of more important to him than all of those people back at the caravan. And so he actually sort of, risks all of their lives to let her go. And she's at that point, that was all for Henka. That moment totally scripted. Like she's had undead birds, and they're a little, every now and then he looks up and sees sort of like a ragged looking seagull pass by. That's one of her undead spies tracking him. So like that was all set up, all scripted for her. That was sort of like the first meeting so that she can sort of say, okay, you know, like, oh, we'll meet up again, and, you know, plant that thought in his head and sort of get that ball rolling.
Just amazing.
She was always in control, which is just wild.
Oh yeah.
But but it goes all the way because she's in control the entire trilogy, right up until that last moment when Neil grabs her heart.
Yeah.
And she just doesn't see it coming because she thought she had him.
Yeah.
And he just found that one loophole. Is like, okay, well, if I leave this place, I have to destroy it. So if I just stay here, then technically I'm not disobeying. I'm just bending your command. And I loved it.
Yeah. Oh, that was fun. Right? Because I mean, trying to figure all that stuff out, you know, at the end, because you know, like I said, I don't plan all this stuff. There's an element of like I said, 3 chapters at a time. And when I'm 3 chapters from the end of the book, it's like, how the fuck is this gonna work?
So that twist is something you came up with in those 3 chapters. For the entirety of the series, Nil was freed and was his friend right up until.
Yeah, so I never had a firm decision on exactly how free Nil was. Or there was a period where I was like, maybe he helped break the heart and he's working with Henka, or I was briefly entertaining the idea that he actually wanted to bring the god back and that was his angle and he was working against Henka. But really it wasn't until the end of the book where it clicked exactly what was going on for him. And then it was a case of sort of like making sure that all held together. Which kind of meant reading the first 2 books again, and going back through earlier stuff in the first book just to make sure it all fit.
Okay.
But a lot of that ending kind of happened organically.
Perfect.
That is so interesting because, like I said, the whole time I was reading the 3rd book, I'm just like, it was really good and I was really engaged. But I'm like, how is he going to end this? Like, it doesn't feel like it's necessarily like coming up. You didn't seem like you were setting up like things to specifically end. You were just still telling the story. And I did for a moment. I thought that you were like trolling me when I got in like chapter 1. And I'm like, wait, this is from the 1st book. And I went and I grabbed my 1st book. I'm like, this is from the 1st book. And I'm like, did he send me a joke file? What is this? And like, I seriously wondered for a minute. And then I kept reading and I'm just like, oh.
I wondered when I was reading, because I did look at the table of contents and I saw chapter 1. What?
Oh, you
So
peeped.
apparently, if I would have just looked at the table of contents, I would have been
the table of contents. Is
Yeah.
that cheating? I don't know.
Yeah. So for the actual sort of final release, all that chapter stuff's getting stripped out. It'll just, you know, chapter.
It'll be the afterword.
Yeah, you know, that kind of thing, prologue, epilogue, whatever. And I didn't do in the print copies. There's no table of contents ever because I didn't want people to see when Bren's chapters are coming up. So that stuff I will clean up a bit for the actual sort of final releases.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Awesome.
This wasn't the ARC version was really me scrambling to get a sort of like reviewer ready copy out as fast as I could. So yeah, like the did I drop some of the images in there, some of the illustrations? I think I did. Oh, good. You know, so trying to get some of those in and get them in kind of the right place.
Yeah, they were in the right places. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But that was a mad last minute panic because I'm awesome at schedule.
Did you have another live show that reminded you to get the arc ready?
Yeah.
The one Alexa notification he actually paid attention to.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
So let's see.
Do you have a favorite scene or moment from the trilogy that just makes you cackle in delight?
That's really hard. I think one of my favorite scenes is when Kren he hasn't quite admitted it to himself, but he is just a shitty human. The first time he's in Abajan, and he's up on the wall when he decides to close the walls.
I was just about to mention, it wasn't when he closed the gates.
Yeah, he closed the gates, and he realizes that the wizards on the ship have Henka, and they're going to take off, and he just pulls out his demon sword and slaughters his way down the steps, on his way to get to the harbor as fast as possible, because nothing else fucking matters. He doesn't care. He has no idea where Bren is. He is just killing anything and everything on his way to save the woman he loves. And that, for me, that was a moment of that's your first real peek at who he really is.
I did love revisiting that city and getting to kind of hear more and see more of the aftermath of what he did. Like, it was horrific in the moment, but like the long-term effects, they very much continued, and bad things, and kind of him really having to face what he did. I thought added to that as well. But that whole scene with him just literally realizing nothing else matters, and that was a really good one.
Yeah, I liked going back there. Fantasy, we have a tendency to sort of gloss over repercussions. The heroes do stuff, and there are explosions and cities burn, and then everybody charges off into the sunset, and it's all kind of okay. It's like, yeah, you go back 2 months later, trade stopped, the city's still burning. You woke the demons and you fucked off.
Yeah, we definitely showed that for sure. We showed a lot of repercussions to that world.
So I haven't clicked comments in a while. I don't know what the LOL was responding to. Lana stopped by and said she's just stopping in to say hi and that she'll check the replay.
Danger
I don't know what this means.
Oh, Seraphina's Lament. Yeah, that is Sarah Chorn's book.
Oh, she was helping you out, and I just clicked the comment.
Is that a grim dark book as well, or?
Yeah, Sarah's pretty dark.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
She writes a really emotionally powerful stuff.
Cool.
I would not have, just from seeing her covers, I would not have pictured that.
Okay.
If it's who I'm thinking of.
I'll have to look that up.
Have some. Yeah, I was gonna say I definitely have some authors to check out now. We also had a Hey Now. I'm not entirely.
I think
sure
that was when I was making fun of Crin for being in love with. Oh God, I forgot her name.
Oh, it could have been
the Caravan Guard.
I say this is definitely about Crin. But it did feel like the first book, the story being told, it was super different than the story being told in book 2, and then also super different than the story being told in book 3, while also still very much being the same. I felt like, so it's just the way it started out with, like, we're literally, like, if you describe the first book and just are selective on what you describe, it would sound like a romantic comedy. Like a man coming from his dark, mysterious past, but he's learning how to love, or something, like, like you can literally just like selectively do it, like him literally learning to love and learning, exploring all these experiences the first time, and yet there's all of the darkness of the world too, but kind of just the like simple story that, especially looking back, like I feel like rereading this too and kind of seeing all of the little things that you didn't know the first time. I feel like this would be a great series for that, especially after going to the ending. And the end actually almost makes you want to just start over, because it, even though I know it's setting up something else, it just kind of rolls back into the first one. Yeah. So it's this will definitely be a series that I reread and look at. I'm like, oh yeah, I can see all of these tiny little things that I didn't notice.
I need you to do the I need you to go back to voice only for one video and do a romantic comedy trailer for the Blackstone Heart, and then
can she melt his Blackstone heart?
Yeah, you're gonna get so many comments of, I read this and I don't know what you're talking about.
There is actually a really terrible metalcore song that the chorus is, "Can my black heart ever be red again?" And so now I'm not going to be able to stop thinking about this.
I need this, Nico. I need this.
that out.
You can have it unlisted. I don't care. As long as I got a link to it and I can share it to everybody we ever talk to.
Maybe that'll be a return of the badly describing books, but all like genre switching books badly or something.
Yes, that could be so much fun.
Oh man, genre swap. Yeah, there we go. Oh man,
Yes. This could work. This could be a good thing. I don't know. After reading this trilogy, I'm super excited to explore more of your work. I think I'm gonna do Nori Leska Groans first, and that one's hard on the tongue, and then probably the Manifest Illusions next.
Cool. Yeah, they're all various shades of dark.
And then eventually, maybe the one that only sold 32 copies.
Yeah, that was so 88. The original version with the publisher, that was maybe 32 copies. Later, I got the rights back. Publisher was really good. They were really nice. They gave me the rights back, and I self-published it as Ghosts of Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
As Ghosts of Tomorrow, it is sold much better.
Is that the one with that looks like it's a Western?
Yes, that's a
Okay.
scene from right near the end of the book.
I think I've got that book actually.
I
On
randomly
ebook.
found it at Half Price Books, and I thought that was so cool to see. So,
All right, well, now I know.
Yeah.
When I read it, I'm like, this was the first one. This is the one.
Yep, that's the one. There's I can't remember. I think I wrote some intro for it, just talking about the whole process and how it sort of ended up being what it is. And
You didn't get Mark Lawrence to do it for you?
No, I didn't know Mark well enough at the time. He wasn't volunteering to write bios for me. Recent development.
Maybe you'll get his home address eventually. Just keep
Yeah.
sending him bios.
I thought I had him. I thought that time I was like, yeah, he's gonna want whiskey. He's gonna give me his home address, and I can stalk Mark. But
You're
sadly,
just
he
gonna
was
hop
too
on a
clever.
plane to the UK and just show up
I
at his
got
front
nothing
door,
else to do.
hand deliver it.
Yeah.
See if he'll let you sleep on his couch.
Mark is funny. So you guys know I do the Wizards, Warriors, and Words podcast with Rob Hayes and those guys. Mark will not come on.
He will
What?
not.
No, he won't. I'm like, oh, come on the podcast. He's like, no.
I saw you tweet about that one time.
Not even, he won't even, it's not even up for consideration. He's just like, nah. God. Yeah.
have to lure him with more whiskey.
A
Somehow
case.
we'll get his address, home address.
I actually haven't seen any interviews really with Lawrence before. So maybe it's just not a personal thing. Maybe it's just his
Yeah,
thing.
I think he doesn't love that sort of he doesn't want to be on screen, he's not super comfortable with something like this. It's just not his cup of tea.
Yeah. I'm not interested in that kind of
That's fair
engagement.
though.
Yeah.
No, yeah. No, I totally get it.
Seems like a nice guy though. That's so cool that he wrote your bio. That's neat.
Yeah, that was absolutely. I mean, it did not expect that at all. And when he did, I mean, it's obviously it's like, okay, I have to use this.
I got a really big kick out of it reading it, so it just made me laugh. Like, hi, I'm Mark Lawrence. Nicola Fletcher's too lazy to write his bio. And it literally starts like that. And it's just like a normal bio. And
Yeah.
it just I was so unexpected when I read that. And it just gave me a chuckle.
Yeah. This trilogy though was so much fun, and I guess what do you think you would use to describe this trilogy overall if you were just pitching it to somebody? Would you use the terminology grimdark? How do you feel about the words grimdark, by the way?
Yeah, I'm not I don't love the term, not because I don't like grimdark, because apparently that's what I write. But a lot of people use it to sort of dismiss grimdark, and they're like, "Oh, it's a grimdark novel. I don't like grimdark." It's like, it's a fantasy novel.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. Like, what's a fantasy novel without sword fights and violence and some swearing and somebody drinking too much, and like that's fantasy. And so, like, yes, maybe it's a little grittier, it's a little darker. Kren gets a little nasty with his undead girlfriend, but it's just it's dark fantasy, to me. I mean, that's, when I grew up, that's what we would have called it. It was dark fantasy.
Yeah.
I
think Johanna and I have had this conversation as well.
I just love this conversation. I love this topic. I love this.
Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation because the term grimdark is actually relatively not that old. While the term dark fantasy has, much more longer origins and it's been around a lot longer. And really dark fantasy it's grittier. It shines a light on the nasty stuff, like, the body count or the repercussions, or, it kind of removes that shine from your heroes or your anti-heroes and shows them in a stark light. Mark Lawrence, to go back to him, is very good at this in the Broken Empire trilogy, which a lot of people say is nihilism. It's dark fantasy. It's just a very, very dark fantasy. But like King of Thorns is like a perfect example of it, where, you get the people who see Jorg as from the outside. I actually don't want to drop a spoiler for King of Thorns, and then like you get to see it from Jorg's point of view. You're like, oh, Jorg is trash. And but like, a lot of the people were like, oh, he's actually this pretty good dude. And like, no, he's not. And I think the dark fantasy / grimdark genre just really removes that filter and you see things as they actually are.
Yeah. For me, it was weird to realize that, it didn't matter what I thought I was writing. Like, as the author, you sort of think, oh, I'm writing this book and that's therefore what it is. And it's like, when the rest of the world is like, it's a grimdark book. The fact that you didn't think it was, it doesn't fucking matter. It is now. I am now a grimdark writer. Never wanted to be, never set out to be, never tried to be. I don't put thought into genre at all. I have a story. I tell the story I want to tell. It turns out however it turns out. Apparently that means dark.
That's
but
it looks like Jonathan chimed in with just saying, it's a new term, like new adult, and a lot just dark fantasy is more broad. And there's always the new marketing terms, and it's just one of the buzzwords. So, grimdark's hot. We got to call everything grimdark now.
I don't think grimdark. I think maybe it was briefly hot. I don't think it has been for a while. The big publishers, they're not out there like scraping up every grimdark author. It's not what they're looking for. Luckily, when you're self-publishing, the grimdark niche, small as it is still big enough that you'll survive.
Yeah. Well, I think it's useful for describing like a certain kind of flavor of fantasy. If you're trying to explain if this might be something you're interested in, something that has kind of a darker, grittier tone, or I guess just tone in general. But yeah, I can understand what you mean, though. It's funny because I feel like a lot of grimdark authors don't necessarily set off to write grimdark fantasy, and then the label comes secondarily. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's something you just sort of you have to accept and going, okay.
And
then for books and books after Prince of Thorns, like entire different trilogies, people are like, Mark Lawrence is a grimdark author. Like, yeah, really, is he though? I mean, like, yeah, okay, that one trilogy, you go like, yeah, that was grimdark. Red Queen's War, gapping on the protagonist's name, the coward.
Jalen,
yeah. Like, was that really grimdark? And then like the newer stuff, Dispel Illusion and stuff, like not remotely grimdark. The Red Nuns, yeah, dark fantasy, but not really grimdark either. But he's still like, still a ton of people are like, he's a grimdark author.
You want to talk about one of the most misrepresented series? Like, I was told that they were assassin nuns, and I'm like, they never assassinate anybody. They're battle nuns. That's what they are. They're battle nuns. They're not assassin nuns. They don't go out and commit assassinations. It's not their shtick.
That's all I ever hear about that series.
No, it's not what it is. You are following an 11-year-old girl as she grows up in a battle school situation with a very heavy church element. That's all it is. She never goes out and assassinate. She might kill some people, but she doesn't assassinate them.
Sometimes you just get that for sure with books where it's just like, everyone's going to say it's this. I've had that with a lot of books where I start reading it like, this isn't what people said it is at all.
I know you were like that with Kings of the Wild.
Hmm.
Everybody said Kings of the
That
Wild
was-
was
that was
grimdark,
very
and it's not.
misrepresented to
It's a
me.
comedy.
Yeah, it's a rock and roll fantasy.
Yeah, that's all it is.
It's like
It's got like
Final
a
Path
dark
of
scene.
fantasy.
Yeah, that's how I've heard it described, like a rock, like almost
Yeah.
like an homage to like classic rock and D&D. That's what I've heard. So,
Yeah.
yeah, very cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, anybody, I think we're starting to get a little long in the tooth here. Anybody have any final questions, thoughts?
I already asked my hot sauce question. I guess I could ask it with barbecue sauce.
Well,
No,
naturally, that'd be the
no
purple
barbecue
one,
sauce.
right?
Yeah, it's the purple one. The purple one with the
Yeah.
barbecue sauce. Okay. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
you want
This
to.
is why I'm torn on getting the hardcovers because I love the purple on the paperback on this one. I do love the hardcovers also look great, but I like that cover a lot.
Yeah. I have yet to collect the physical copies, but now I really want to. So, yay.
I love the hardcovers.
Yeah,
That's why I
And-
want them so bad. I've seen yours in person and I'm
And
jealous.
what I love is that they actually have the appropriate binding on the spine, where it's got that like little cloth ribbon instead of just being glued in there. So that
Fletcher
it can
hand
fall.
sews all of them.
All of them.
all of
You've
them.
mentioned that
You know,
before. I
I
remember you
thought I thought this looked a little sloppy. No, I love these. I absolutely love them.
All right. Well, I think we will probably wrap up. I know a couple have to get going, but thanks everyone for joining. We just had a late rally and more people showed up.
There's always the replay.
It's we'll definitely have plenty of replay time. for
Oh,
it, but
we need to push the pre-order.
yeah, well, it's you beat me too. That's what I was gonna say. Definitely check out and don't be like me and get the month wrong. It's May 15th. May 15th. And then Tesoro is out. You can pre-order on ebook on Amazon right now. Physical copies you can order the day of release when it comes out. And also, I was trying to figure out how to share a picture of the cover, but it's amazing. So I love the new covers. So definitely recommend a nice physical copy of it so that you can display it. It's a great book too. The cover is fantastic. But yeah, definitely check it out. Of course, check out also Andrew's and Johanna's channel if you haven't for some reason. I'm assuming that you've heard of them if you've heard of me. It's usually, I feel like, a pretty safe bet. But in case you haven't checked them out, and as we've talked about plenty, Michael R. Fletcher, I'm pointing the wrong way again, has plenty of other books. Definitely check those out. I know I'm really excited too as well. But thanks everybody for coming out to watch and posting comments and questions. Very much appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
thanks so
fun.
much for joining.
Thank you.
It's a lot of fun getting to just chat about stuff.
Absolutely.
Great pleasure.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Aw.
Tra-la-la.